Right now, American embassies are under siege. But here's what nobody's telling you. This exact scenario has happened before. Same tactics, same playbook, same orchestrators. And the terrifying part? We keep responding the exact same way, which is exactly what they're counting on. Stay with me for the next 15 minutes because what I'm about to show you will completely change how you see what's happening right now. I'm going to walk you through a pattern spanning 45 years. A pattern that connects the Tehran embassy crisis of 1979 to Benghazi in 2012 to Baghdad in 2020 to what's burning on your screen right now. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a documented strategy from Iran-backed militias, and the evidence is hiding in plain sight. By the end of this video, you'll understand three things. First, why these attacks follow an identical script. Second, why our response keeps failing. And third, and this is the part that should concern everyone, what happens next if we don't break the cycle? Let's dive in. November 4th, 1979, Tehran, Iran. 52 Americans were taken hostage when Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. Embassy. But here's what your history textbook probably didn't tell you. This wasn't a spontaneous mob. This was a calculated, military-style operation disguised as a popular uprising. The attackers knew the embassy layout. They knew the security rotations. They knew exactly which buildings held classified materials and which held the ambassador's staff. How? Because they've been planning this for months with the full knowledge of Iran's new revolutionary government. Now here's the pattern. Write this down because we're going to see it repeated. Step 1. Create domestic unrest. In 1979, it was anti-American sentiment after the Shah's admission to the U.S. for medical treatment. Step 2. Organize spontaneous protests that aren't spontaneous at all. Notice how protesters in Tehran had professional-grade cutting equipment to breach the gates. How did they have detailed maps of the compound? Step 3. Overwhelm security with numbers while the world watches on television. Step 4. Use the hostages as political leverage while claiming it's a people's revolution, not a state action. This gave Iran plausible deniability. We don't control the students, they claimed. Except they absolutely did. The US response? Diplomatic negotiations that went nowhere. A failed rescue mission, Desert 1, where 8 American service members died. And ultimately, 444 days of national humiliation that ended only when Ronald Reagan was inaugurated and Iran suddenly decided to release everyone. That playbook worked, so they kept it. Fast forward to September 11, 2012, Benghazi, Libya. A protest over an anti-Islamic film suddenly turns into a coordinated assault on the American diplomatic compound. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans are killed. The compound is overrun and burned. The students, calling themselves the Muslim student followers of the Imam's line, had planned the operation for weeks. They knew the compound layout. They came prepared with bolt cutters and scaling equipment. And critically, Ayatollah Khomeini's government, initially cautious, quickly endorsed the seizure and used it as a lever to consolidate revolutionary power domestically. Whether Khomeini ordered it from the start or opportunistically adopted it after the fact remains debated by historians, but the outcome was the same. A state apparatus that publicly denied control while privately benefiting from it entirely. The U.S. response? Diplomatic negotiations that went nowhere for over a year. A catastrophic rescue attempt, Operation Eagle Claw, later called Desert 1, where 8 American service members died in a desert collision before they ever reached Tehran. And ultimately, 444 days of televised national humiliation that ended not through diplomacy, but on the day Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. a timing that has fueled controversy and congressional inquiry to this day. The lesson Iran drew from 1979 was stark. This works, not just as terrorism, as strategic leverage, as a tool for domestic political consolidation, as a way to tie up a superpower without ever firing a single shot in open warfare. April 18, 1983. A suicide bomber drives a van loaded with explosives into the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon. 63 people are killed, including 17 Americans and many of the CIA's Middle East station. 6 months later, on October 23, 1983, 2 truck bombs hit the U.S. Marine barracks and the French paratroopers' headquarters in Beirut. 241 American service members are killed in a single morning. It remains the deadliest single-day attack on U.S. Marines since Iwo Jima. The group responsible? Islamic Jihad Organization, a front name for what would become Hezbollah, with documented support from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC. This is the moment the playbook evolved. Iran had learned something crucial from 1979. Direct state action carries diplomatic cost, sanctions, isolation, international censure. But a proxy, a non-state armed group you fund, train, and equip while publicly denying, lets you project force with a firewall of deniability. This is the architecture that the IRGC's Quds Force would spend the next 4 decades building and refining. A constellation of armed partners, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, funded to the tune of an estimated $700 million a year at peak, according to the Council on Foreign Relations. Iran called it the axis of resistance. Western analysts call it the most sophisticated state-sponsored proxy network in modern history. September 11, 2012. Extremist group. Al-Qaeda and Iran are ideological rivals. What the investigations did find was this. Here's the through line. Regardless of which group pulls the trigger, the operational template, crowd cover, fire, deniability, television, keeps working. Because we keep being surprised by it. December 31st, 2019. This time, there's no ambiguity about the chain of command. Kataib Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization with documented IRGC Quds Force funding, training, and weapons supply, organized a march from a funeral for fighters killed in U.S. airstrikes directly to the heavily fortified U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad's Green Zone. Iraqi security forces, which the U.S. had spent 16 years and trillions of dollars building, stood aside as the crowd surged through the gates, smashed the main reception door, spray-painted "Closed in the Name of the Resistance" on the walls, and set the reception area ablaze. The U.S. government later estimated $35 million in damage from the fires alone. No Americans were killed. Marines held the interior without lethal force. But look at the playbook, beat for beat. Step 1. Grievance. U.S. airstrikes on Kataib Hezbollah positions that had killed a U.S. contractor. Step 2. Organized crowds. Iranian-backed militia commanders, including figures who had previously visited the Obama White House, were photographed leading the march. Step 3. Overwhelm by numbers. Iraqi security forces, who would normally guard the Green Zone, essentially allowed it to happen. Step 4. Deniability. Iran's foreign ministry denied orchestrating the event. The same day, President Trump tweeted that Iran was fully responsible. 3 days later, the United States killed IRGC Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani, the architect of the proxy network for decades, in a drone strike near Baghdad airport. Iran retaliated with ballistic missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq. Dozens of American service members suffered traumatic brain injuries. Notice what just happened. Attack, retaliate, counter-retaliate. No change in underlying conditions. No change in the proxy infrastructure. Just the next turn of the cycle. So where does that leave us right now? Here's what's genuinely new about the current moment, and what's the same. The axis of resistance is weaker than it's been in a decade. Israel's military campaign since October 2023 has decapitated Hezbollah's senior leadership and degraded Hamas's military capacity. And the fall of Assad in December 2024 severed the Syrian logistics corridor that Iran used to move weapons from Tehran to Beirut. Qasem Soleimani, the man who spent 30 years building this network, is dead. His replacement doesn't have his relationships, his knowledge, or his authority. But here's what analysts at places like the Institute for National Security Studies are now saying. A weakened axis isn't a safer axis. It's a wilder one. When the central coordination degrades, local commanders make their own escalation calculations. The Houthis have already demonstrated they can disrupt global shipping lanes from Yemen. Iraqi militias still hold territory and weapons, and Iran is actively trying to rebuild. In April 2025, it reportedly transferred long-range missiles to Iraqi militia groups capable of reaching targets in Europe. U.S. embassies, as symbols, as targets, as television stages, remain the most reliable instrument in this playbook. Because they always generate the footage. They always trigger the debate, and they always reliably put American policymakers on the defensive. I promised you 3 things. The third one, what happens next, depends entirely on whether we can break a 45-year pattern. So let's talk about why we haven't. The response cycle looks like this. An attack happens, a debate explodes about who's responsible and who's to blame politically, security gets upgraded at the specific facility that was just hit, some form of retaliation occurs, the underlying proxy infrastructure remains intact, and 18 months later, we're surprised by the next attack. There are 3 structural failure modes embedded in this cycle. Step 1. The intelligence failure isn't about intelligence. In Benghazi, the security team was specifically warned about deteriorating conditions. In Baghdad, the embassy had been in a non-standard temporary status for years, making it harder to allocate proper security resources. The failure is bureaucratic and political, not a lack of information. Step 2. Retaliation without strategy. Killing Soleimani was the most dramatic single action the US has taken against the proxy network, but it didn't dismantle the network. It just created a vacancy that got filled. Tactical success, strategic ambiguity. Step 3. The deniability trap. Because Iran operates through proxies, each individual attack is legally and diplomatically difficult to attribute directly to Tehran. This prevents a coherent long-term strategy and enables the same debate to restart from scratch every time. The playbook works 45 years later because it was designed around our failure modes, not our strengths. So the next time you see footage of an American embassy under siege, I want you to resist the instinct to see it as a breaking news event. I want you to see it for what it actually is. Chapter 46 of a very long book. Written in 1979, revised in Beirut, updated in Nairobi, republished in Benghazi, and still in print today. Understanding the playbook doesn't mean being paralyzed by it. It means we can finally stop being surprised, and maybe, just maybe, start writing a different response. If this gave you a framework you didn't have before, hit the like button and subscribe to Authority and Aftermath, the American Crossroads. I cover geopolitics like this every week. I'll see you in the next one.